Hello everyone, let's talk about a very important topic, that is the downgrading of the US Treasury bond. On May 16th, which is the 59th anniversary of the start of the Cultural Revolution, okay, the US Moody's, that is one of the top three credit rating agency, made a huge announcement that is it will downgrade the credit rating of US Treasury bonds from the highest level, AAA, to one step down. This is the third and the last of the top three credit raters to downgrade the US Treasury bond, so that the US Treasury bond is all having below AAA level of credit rating by all top three credit rating agencies. So the question is, what's the consequence? What's the reason? And then what will China do? The first, what's the consequence? The consequence is not cosmetic. This is not cosmetic. Let me tell you, okay? This is not just symbolic, okay? This is of substance. Because when any financial instrument which is no longer having AAA level of credit rating, then by the charters of many investment funds and insurance companies, they can no longer allocate a large amount of their assets to US Treasury bond. This is by regulation, this is by their own charters. This is very significant. That is, the Treasury bond no longer is able to maintain the highest level of credit rating, and many agencies and investment funds will have to sell. They have to sell. They have to sell their assets. That's why during the past few trading days, the yield of the US Treasury bond went beyond 5%, meaning that the price of the publicly traded Treasury bond has been declining. Now, what's the reason? Why the downgrading by the Moody's? I think it's super clear. It is not economic. It is not financial, okay? Frankly speaking, there are few alternatives to the US Treasury bond in today's financial world. The Treasury bond has been the most liquid, the safest financial assets in this world. There's no doubt the US will be able to service the Treasury bond. The US will be able to issue new Treasury bonds to pay the old ones, including the interest payments. However, the problem is President Trump. President Trump 2.0 has demonstrated to us that he will be able to change many rules. He will do many things to surprise us. Now, Treasury bond, the foundation of the US Treasury bond is stable, predictable, and reliable future behavior and reliable schedule of paying back its interest. But under President Trump, this level of stable expectation, the norm, cannot be automatically guaranteed. There may well be scenarios or situations in which the White House will somehow, somewhere, step in the way. So I do think the Moody's motivation, the Moody's main reason, whatever the openly stated reason, the fundamental reason is politics. It's not economic, okay? It's not that the Moody's are Democrats and the president is the Republican. It's not like that. It is purely based on financial and economic calculation that the new US administration is no longer be reliable to obey existing rules in servicing the Treasury bond. Now, final question, the most important question for many of our audience: what will the Chinese government do? After all, the Chinese government holds a huge amount of nearly 1 trillion US dollar amount of Treasury bond, okay, directly or indirectly. So what will be the Chinese response, okay? Now, I can almost assure you, in most circumstances, in normal circumstances, Chinese side, the Chinese decision makers will not undermine this regime, will not try to sell its own holdings of US Treasury bond as a way to undermine the financial regime, to undermine the US financial system. It is not in the interest of the Chinese decision makers. Why? Because if the US Treasury bond face any problems, or if the US financial markets face any problems, China will become a big victim, one of the biggest victims, right? Where so many assets, so many companies are dependent on transactions, financial transactions with Wall Street. And a lot of their assets are linked to the value of the treasury bond. So in almost all conceivable circumstances, China will not be a disruptive force of the existing system. However, let me also make the following careful statement. If the Trump administration would do something which goes beyond the normal practice, goes beyond the norm of international diplomacy, then the Chinese side might be cornered to do something, to sell its treasury bond. Let me be very careful. If something extraordinary is done by the US White House, the Chinese side will have no other alternatives but have to sell its own treasury bond holdings, at least part of it, as a way to protect the value of its investment. After all, the amount of treasury bonds Chinese government holds is accumulated savings of Chinese households, including myself. We work hard. We save a lot. We sold many goods to the US, earning trade surplus, and then in exchange we got US treasury bonds. So this is the value that we have been working very hard to accumulate. So there's reasons for the Chinese government to protect this value. So to summarize, I would say that it's very unfortunate to see that the US treasury bond is downgraded by the last leading credit rating agency, okay? And I believe the main reason is politics, and I hope the US politics will go back to its normalcy, will end its current chaotic situation, so that somehow, some way, and sometime, the treasury bond rating will come back. Third point is that in almost all conceivable situations, Chinese will not be a disruptive force of the treasury bond market unless extraordinary things and horrible things are done by the US administration. So I hope the whole situation will gradually sort it out before too long. Any comments, any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you very much.